David.
That's me.
How long have you been with TEXO?
Since the start of this year. Started on January the 3rd, came in for our training week, which was very exciting.
Right, and what's your background? What's your job role here at TEXO DSI?
So I am the Chief UAS Pilot.
Right, wow, that's a lofty title. So take us through, what is it that you actually do then?
Well, a typical day could be anything. It's very, very varied. So could be out doing a mapping mission one day, could then be flying around inside big storage tanks doing inspections the next day, could be doing 3D modelling of buildings the next day. You know, every day is varied. Inspections of assets, facades, you know, it's a really varied job, which is why I love it.
So talk us through your path of becoming a pilot. What were you doing beforehand? As long as you're allowed to talk about that.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, believe it or not, I had a very long career in IT for, close to 30 years, and was working in the city, getting very bored doing what I've always done for that amount of time. And I had a real interest in drones because it was a hobby. So I used to race FPV drones. And so, you know, got the drone bug quite early. We used to tie GoPros to the early drones, which was never a good idea, but you know, it was all good fun in the days. So an opportunity came up to leave what I was doing, start my own business, which I did. So I started a drone company. So I was doing similar things for myself.
Right.
But then unfortunately we had the pandemic, which...
Dear old pandemic.
Yes, unfortunately cost me that. So I looked into continuing in the industry, but now just flying for other people rather than myself.
So what does it take to become a pilot of your level then? The process. Take us through how you become, the licensing, the training.
Okay, there's a number of what they call national qualified entities in the UK, training centres if you like, for the Civil Aviation Authority. So you would approach one of them with a view to getting one of the accreditations, whether that's a certificate of competency or a GVC, General VLOS Flying Certificate. Basically the difference between the two is the type of craft you can fly.
Right.
So the A2COC lets you fly smaller drones. If you need to fly bigger machinery in more complex areas, then you need a GVC.
Right.
So you would approach those, an amount of training, money changes hands, you know, the usual.
Not bribes though, but just obviously
bribes,
just the cost of the course.
Just the cost of the course. And then you are assessed. There's an amount of theory, an amount of flight test, and providing you pass that, you are then issued your certificate from the CAA, giving you those permissions.
How long does it take? What's the duration of these courses?
Yeah, I mean, it varies because you can do some of them online, some of them are completely classroom based. It varies from provider to provider, but you know, you would say 2 to 3 days probably for the A2, and maybe a week to get your GVC.
But obviously your background, you flew drones in numerous aspects beforehand. Would you say that the level of pilot that DSI requires, the training is adequate, or do you carry out additional training when people come into DSI?
Training never stops.
Right.
I mean, the type of work we do here, the type of platforms that we use, very complex, and we tend to work in very complex and challenging environments. So safety is always first. Before you even get anything off the ground, everything has been, you know, thoroughly risk assessed, and a thorough plan of how we're going to approach each job. So just the training alone, the training around that in itself is quite intense. And then to pilot the actual things in some of these environments, we have a different standard, a different level of pilot here. We're doing things that very, very few people in the UK are doing.
Because it's talking to some of your colleagues, it's not necessarily, and they're very complimentary about your quality of your piloting, so that's a good thing. It's not just the ability to fly a drone, it's ability to collect the right data.
Well, flying the drone is kind of secondary. The data is the whole reason for being there. If you collect data that's no good, then you've either got to revisit, or you know, the whole job could be ruined anyway. So You know, the drone is just like any other equipment in any other industry. It's just a tool. It's the person who's controlling the tool and the result that they get that matters. So there is an emphasis in the training outside of the safety in making sure we get the best possible data first time, every time.
Do you think, obviously I know it's not all aerial and land survey, so there are other sort of tools, but drones in their own have had bad sort of publicity, especially when people have been delayed going on holiday because drones flying near an airport. How have you found your clients' perception on drones being? Is it just something, it's a drone, you can fly it? Is that, do you come across any of that sort of?
I think the clients understand what the tools can do because they're the ones asking for the data. I think it's more the general public,
Right.
Especially when you're out working. You would have to say that 90% of the interactions you have, if not maybe 95, are generally just people being interested. You know, you will get the occasional, oh, was it you at Gatwick comment? But most people are genuinely interested in what you're doing, and especially when they can see how this is saving people from having to go up ladders and do things in a more risky way. They can see the benefit of it. I mean, we were doing an environmental survey on the coast only yesterday, and a number of the dog walkers came past and said, oh, is this for moving our sand defences around? And it's like, well, yes, it is. And I said, oh, that's great, we're so glad you're here. You know, and they can see the benefit because they know that it's going to mean that the people that make those decisions around sea defences have that data quicker and can act with more accuracy.
What's one of the projects that have stood out for you in terms of, it might be complexity or the way that you flew the job? What are one of those projects that stands out?
We recently did a structural survey of a Premier League football stadium. That was quite interesting.
Right.
Obviously, just the venue itself was quite interesting because you got to spend a bit of time behind the scenes at the club and see all those guys that doing their business and made friends with the groundsman and definitely don't step on his pitch.
Yes, there's something about groundsmen and pitches. I don't know what it is, but
yeah, but it was a very complex job because of the amount of angles that we needed to capture for the inspection of what was a very intricate steel structure. So things like that are very interesting, calls for some very accurate flying, some very risky flying around all these suspended steel beams, and it's that kind of thing that keeps you interested and keeps you wanting to turn up the next day and carry on with it.
Well, yeah, exactly. So, in sort of what you do on a daily basis, how have drones or the surveying really changed the landscape of inspection?
I think coming back to safety and speed. I mean, if you think about the things that we can go and look at now, I mean, previously you would have to wait weeks to get scaffold up and get permissions for closing paths and things to get those scaffolds up, or you'd be putting people up in moops or cherry pickers and things like that, which has an element of danger, or even worse than that, you might have to resort to rope access, you know, people doing extremely dangerous things to get up and inspect these things for you. Now we can do this safely from the ground in no time at all with none of those other access permissions that used to be required. So you would hope that we're making the industry a safer place.
Well, yeah, I think that does come across quite clearly. That's one of the sort of TEXO's aspirations, is to make sure that the other clients know that it's very much based on its sort of health and safety aspects. What does TEXO do differently, do you feel, to other land and aerial survey companies?
Well, I think that the difference is the land aspect that you mentioned. I mean, having been in this industry for a while, you have a lot of drone specialists. You know, they know how to fly a drone, they know how to go out and get the data, but as far as they're concerned, that's the end of it. They then pass the data on. If you then need a bit of land capture or, you know, a bit of scanning to go with that, then they're going to pass you on to someone else, and you're going to be the one who's collating all the data and coming up with your own results. At TEXO, we can combine everything. We can do laser scanning from the ground, from vehicles, from the LiDAR from the drones, put that together with the photogrammetry and deliver the whole thing for the customer, already inspected and and commented on. So yeah, I'd say that's the big difference, is we're not just a drone company. We can do the whole survey picture.
How have you found TEXO?
I have found them to be incredibly professional.
Yeah.
From some of the other places I've worked, it's a standard within the drone industry that you just don't see, which is reflected in the sort of permissions we have. We have permissions that allow us to work in places that other people just can't. And you know, that's a testament to how seriously they take the business and the
Why do you feel that is, though? If TEXO has got, take us through some of those permissions that are either horrendously hard to get or almost impossible, and how does that define TEXO? Is it different? How?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the standard permissions that you get from the CAA, you can take off 30 metres away from people, and you know, under normal circumstances, you have to keep 50 metres away from things that are not involved in the job. At TEXO, with certain craft, we have that down to as little as 2 metres,
right.
If not 5 metres. And that's due to the work that's gone into how we mitigate the risk. So we've come up with procedures that say, this is how we're going to do it, and this is how we're going to do it safely. And the CAA have looked at that and audited that and said, yeah, we agree, we're happy for you to go on with that. Now, that takes a lot of work to examine all those risks and come up with adequate mitigations, go out, do that in the field repeatedly, and be able to demonstrate and prove how safe we are. So yeah, I think our record probably speaks for itself, or else we still wouldn't have those.
No,
permissions.
indeed. How do you see the industry evolving over, say, let's say 5 years maybe? Where are we going to be in 5 years' time?
I think there's a lot of potential for automation, and I think a lot of clients are interested in that. So a drone in a box type scenario. You can deploy a drone on site and it can pop out and do its thing and go back and recharge and all that sort of thing. I mean, that's where the industry is heading for a lot of things. However, a bit like Amazon found when they wanted to do their drone deliveries, you know, there's a lot of red tape to go through before the CAA are going to be comfortable with that, because of how they feel about the risk to manned aviation. So, you know, although automation looks like the future, it's going to be a slow burn getting there.
And sort of like AI working in the industry, there's lots of talk about sort of the data crunching on the other side. Do you see, you know, that becoming more of a reality over the next few years?
Yeah, I mean, I think as the drone processing power increases, when the drones get more and more power on board, you can send them out and AI can be looking for specifically what you've asked it to look for. It can help you identify, you know, say if you're investigating crops or that sort of thing, the AI could be looking for black grass in a field of wheat and pick it out on the image for you, so you know what bits to capture, which would speed the process and improve the data.
Is there a sector that you feel that's going to have a big explosion in interest with drones?
Well, I think the delivery companies, you know, being able to do the last mile by drone for people like Amazon, DHL, FedEx, that sort of thing, especially given rising fuel costs and congestion and that sort of thing. I think once the logistics and red tape are sorted out, that would be an area where I think you would probably see.
So we're going to have parcels dropping from the sky?
Well, it sounds fanciful, but it could be possible.
All right, brilliant. David, thank you ever so much. There was a lot of insight there. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank
Cheers.
you.